Hey y'all, welcome to your first year of drum lessons, week 23, drum set edition. My name is Penny Larson and I am happy to have you with me today. We're going to change things up a little today, and we're not. We're going to start talking about right hand independence, and the word we're going to use a lot is ostinatos. And an ostinato is just a short repeating. For drummers, usually we think of it as just a short repeating rhythmic pattern because rhythm is what we do. But it can have melody in it too. Some of the ostinatos will have different voices, right? So one that I really like a lot is bass, hi-hat, bass, bass, hi-hat, bass, bass, right? So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, or 1, 1, and a 2, and a 3, and a 4. Sounds like this. Okay, and then we're going to do independent stuff on top of that. The way we're going to start that discussion is we're going to go back to our bass drum patterns that we've been using for a lot of these reading exercises. And we're going to play just one ostinato with our right hand today. Next week, we're going to expand this concept, but today I just want to give you one ostinato pattern so you can understand what's going on. Before I even talk about the worksheet, let's talk about what that ostinato pattern is. You've seen this rhythm before. It's just 2 sixteenths and an eighth note. So the pattern sounds like this. And if I were to play that with, our old money beat, just the 1 and 3, 2 and 4, I get this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So all I did was take our old eighth notes and add a 16th note between the 1 and the and. So instead of okay, pretty simple. Practice it a bit with just the 1, 2, 3, 4 with the bass and snare so you get used to that pattern. It can be tricky to play this, up tempo with your right hand. That's why we talk so much about technique. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about some technique stuff on the drum pad lesson. One of the reasons we talk so much about technique is because when we get over here to the drum set, the ride cymbal and the hi-hat cymbal and the china cymbal and the floor toms and whatever don't respond to anything like a drum pad. Even the snare drum, which the drum pad ostensibly is supposed to feel like a snare drum, but even a snare drum has more give and in some ways is springier, right? Like the drum heads all really act like trampolines. And so if you're using good technique, the drum head will help you a lot. Cymbals can be a little dead. And so if we need to play something like this ostinato up tempo, if you notice, I'm moving my hand a little bit and I'm using my fingers. It's that open close we were talking about before. And I'm sneaking a note in the middle. So it's like there's a few different ways of thinking about this. The most incredible way that I would recommend to you are some great videos by Gordy Knudsen, who if you search Gordy Knudsen open close, you'll find his amazing videos online. He really extends his wrist this far, which I don't do. I tend to open my hand but keep it more in line with my forearm. And even when I speed up, my wrist is sort of just waving between this range. I'm not ever really extending my wrist too far. And for me, that has to do with economy of motion, comfort, what feels like it naturally works with my body. And so just be aware, right? So this ostinato, our first thing to think about is, well, how fast are we going to play it, right? So work on it, like I say, just with the bass drum and snare drum with the real simple pattern. Start it nice and slow. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and. So that you have plenty of time, and then worry about right, that top one, I'm really sort of switching to rely on the bounce, right? So find a tempo range where you're going to be able to play this comfortably, push yourself a little, but then back down, because what we're doing today is more worried about coordination and independence than speed. So having said that, let's get into our worksheet. As I mentioned, we're going to use the same bass drum patterns we've used for a few other worksheets, but we're going to have this ostinato, 1 E and 2 E and. And that has replaced our hi-hat pattern for all of these examples. Eventually, you will be able to think of an ostinato pattern and just substitute it in your head. I wanted to give us a head start on that concept by taking the first ostinato that I like to introduce and just writing it all out. Okay, so we can see it on the page. Next week, there's going to be a ton of me saying, okay, now you're going to visualize this, and now you're going to visualize that. And so we're going to kind of take this in a different direction. But I wanted to introduce the concept with examples for you to read. So you can just worry about the coordination. You don't have to worry so much about visualizing the concept yet. Let's take one step in the coordination direction, and then we'll talk about visualization next week. I'm going to play through these at a couple different tempos so you can see where the tricky bits are. I'll tell you, the tricky bits are where the bass drum does something interesting that coincides or comes together or goes apart from the hi-hat. It can be as simple as, remember, so if we're playing 1 E and, the I'm not playing, right? 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and right? Okay, so if I have a bass drum on the which, look at that, I do in number 1, I'm going to end up playing 1 E and okay, so let's try number 1. Let's do it pretty slow. You know what, before we even do number 1, I'm going to do just beats 3 and beat 4 of number 1 so you can see what I'm talking about. So I'm going to play 1 E and then 4, sorry, so 3 E and then 4 E and. 3 E and 4 E and. See that? So the bass drum like nestles right in that space that's left by the hi-hat. Let's try all of number 1, about the same tempo. 3 E and 4 E and. And now a little bit faster. I'm not going to do any of these super fast just because the nature of this ride pattern, I don't want to overload things. But we'll go at a moderate tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Number 2 is very similar, right? We've got that offbeat 16th note again, but now we've got a downbeat on the bass drum on beat 3. So instead of being bass snare, it's just bass bass. From a independent standpoint, a coordination standpoint, it's, you know, maybe one notch trickier. Let's try that slow. 1, 2, 3, E and a 4, E and a. And now a little faster. 2, 3, 4. Number 3 is that same independence challenge, but now instead of in the middle of the measure, it's at the end, a 1 with the bass drum, right? 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 4, same basic challenges, right? We're just adding some eighth notes. So now I've got the 1 and then 3, and then the after 3, which is the same thing we had in number 1. So all I'm doing is adding some eighth notes, and the eighth notes are easy, and here's why. Because with this pattern, 1 E and, I'm still playing all the eighth notes with my hi-hat. So let me just play, I'm going to play just eighth notes with my bass drum for the whole measure, 1 and 2 and 3 and you'll see that I'm just going to double all of those notes with my right hand. I'm playing one more note with the hi-hat, right, because I'm playing the E, but all of the on the beat and ands are going to be covered by the and with the bass drum, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so from an independence standpoint, that really isn't much more difficult than just playing quarter notes with the bass drum with this particular pattern. So that number 4 becomes this, slow, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so far, I think these aren't too bad. Number 5, remember here's where we start combining things we've already done. So now I've got the 1, and then and with the bass drum. So the bass drum part is like doom, 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 doom. 1, and 3, and 1, two. So now I've got 2 notes without the hi-hat, but the rest of them are those on the, they're not on the beat, but on the hi-hat notes, right? So let's try this one slow. 3 and 4 and and a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. See how it sounds like there's a ton going on, but really in terms of difficulty, I don't think we've turned the dial up too much, right? Number 6, now we're in that kind of 16th note shuffle. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 3, 4. So now every is going to be filled in with the bass drum, right? That sounds like this. 3 and 4 and And because that one is so repetitive with the bass drum, we're kind of almost doing 2 ostinatos, right? We're doing that doom, 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 bop, doom, 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 bop. That is so regular, it's almost creating its own repeating pattern against our hi-hat repeating pattern, right? And I mean, all of these are, 1-bar phrases, 1-bar grooves. So to a certain extent, they're all going to have that, but number 6 really kind of just sets up that 2 things kind of working really together, right? Okay, so number 7. Now, on beat 1, we're going to play all 3 of the notes with the hi-hat with the bass drum. Oh, did I not do number 6 faster? Let's try number 6 a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, cool, right? Okay, so now number 7, on beat 1, 1 E and, I'm also playing 1 E and with my bass drum, right? The rest of the independence challenges we've already seen, so beats 2, 3, and 4 are nothing. And beat 1 really isn't an independence challenge because I'm playing all 3 notes together, right? Okay, right? So slow, number 7 sounds like this. 3 E and 4 E and and a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. In a lot of ways, number 7 is more of a technique challenge for your foot than it is an independence challenge, right? Especially compared to some of the ones we've already done. We've already seen these independence challenges. Number 8 is where we start to get into a little bit of the craziness. So now on beat 2, I've got both hands together, and then my right hand and my right foot together, and then my right hand by itself, and then my right foot by itself, and then on beat 3, right hand and right foot together, right? So I'm going to play just beat 2, E, and 3, and I get okay, so working on things like that, just taking out one beat is pretty much my favorite way to work on independence challenges. And as we progress through some more interesting independence challenges, we'll see that sometimes taking one beat at a time and just repeating that one beat and then doing the next beat and then kind of putting it together almost like building a train, right, can be the most effective way to kind of get this stuff, the coordination down, so you're not feeling like you're going crazy. All right, so let's try 8 all together. And that sounds like this, slow. 3 E and a 4 E and a. And a little bit faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now number 9, nothing we haven't already seen, right? Just in a different order. So number 9, slow, is 3 E and a 4 E and a. And a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, a couple times I threw in an extra 16th note on the bass drum because I am incorrigible. Number 10, this is probably our most difficult physical challenge in terms of connecting the right hand and the right foot. So right on beat 1, I've got 1 E and with my right hand, but with my right foot, I've got 1 and So I'm almost trading back and forth, right? I'm filling in 1/16th note, the E, with my right hand, and then I'm filling in the other 16th note, the with my right foot, and I'm playing both 8th notes with both of them, right? I'm going to play just 1 E and 2 E and 1 E and 2 E and over and over again a couple times so we can see how that sounds, okay? 3 E and 4 E and Okay, it's not too bad, especially at that tempo, but it can really get inside your head, right? And so I wanted to pick that one out. And again, this is another example that if you get to number 10 and you're like, the heck is she talking about? This is a piece of cake. Awesome, right? Great. But if you're having trouble with number 10, what I would do is just take that first little beat and connect. You can even just do literally the 1 E and over and over again, and that would sound like this. 3 E and 4 E and And honestly, that feels ridiculously awkward. And because it's so out of context, I almost feel like that's not the most helpful thing to do. I would leave out the and just play 1, 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2 while playing the ostinato if I wanted to work just on beat 1. Let's try all of number 10, nice and slow. 3 E and 4 E and and a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 11, we've got kind of an interesting thing going on. On beat 2, I'm playing all 3 notes that I'm playing with my hi-hat, but I'm playing it with my snare and then my bass drum, right? So 2 E and. It kind of makes this independence challenge not that bad, right? I think. Let's try number 11 slow. 3 E and 4 E and and a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 12, there's a lot going on in number 12. So in the first beat, I'm doubling the first 2 notes of the hi-hat pattern with my bass drum. And then on beat 2, I'm playing E and landing on 1, which is a similar independence challenge to number 10, except that I'm not playing the first note with the bass drum, I'm playing it with the snare drum. I think if we tried to separate out one of these patterns, you know what, let's do that. I'm going to separate out each one. So we'll do the first beat, and then I'm going to play just 2 on the snare, and I'm going to not play anything on the bass drum. So I'm going to play 1 E and 2, but I'm going to keep doing the ostinato. So that sounds like this. 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And now, pretty much what I'm going to do is beats 2 and 3 together. So I'm going to play a bass drum on 1, and then the snare, E and A with the bass drum, which means as it loops, I'll do that group of 4 with the bass drum. 3 E and A, 4 E and A. And now all of number 12. 3 E and A, 4 E and A. I got to be honest with y'all, some of these demonstrating them slower is more tricky for me than playing them a little up to speed, because I have this ostinato kind of on autopilot, but then when I slow it down and I start having to think about it, maybe I don't have it as well as I wish I did, or as I thought I did. All right, so let's play 12 a little bit quicker. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 13, we're finally there. We're going to play all 4 16th notes on the first beat with the bass drum, which means we're playing 3 notes together and then 1 by itself on the bass drum. And then just some offbeat 8th notes, and then 3 E and, so on 3 we're with the hi-hat. I think this one looks scarier than it is. Let's try the whole thing slow. 3 E and A, 4 E and A. And a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. This one definitely is as much a physical challenge as you build up the speed. It's as much a physical challenge as a coordination one. Number 14, this one doesn't look too bad, but the way the bass drum pattern kind of goes back and forth with the hi-hat pattern, I actually find this one pretty tricky. Everything we've seen before, it's just the way we're combining it gives it a special something. Slow. 3 E and A, 4 E and A. and a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's something about the way that my foot is playing those doubles and that triple at the beginning that just moving my foot to get ready for one and then get ready for the other. I have to be paying attention more than on a lot of these. I have to be thinking about the, I almost have to not be, I have to be kind of forcefully not letting myself think too much about the technique and think about the notes, right? If I think about the technique, that's when I get kind of lost. Okay, so number 15, this is the one that's just offbeat 16th notes with the bass drum. 1, 2, E, 3, E, 4. And so we're going to be going back and forth between playing with the hi-hat and without the hi-hat. Slow, this one sounds like this. 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 16, we've got a group of 4/16 notes resolving on an eighth, but it resolves on the and, right? And so it's and a, 3 E and. And we're kind of doing a group of 16th notes against what the hi-hat is doing. Let's give that a try. Slow. 3 E and a, 4 E and a. It's kind of not bad, right? Because we're playing the last note on beat 2. So beat the and after 2, we're playing together. And then we've got one bass drum note by itself, but then on beat 3, we're playing 3 E and together. So it's kind of almost like you're handing it off to the bass drum just for a sec, but the bass drum is kind of like joining back, right back up. All right, let's try that one a little faster. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's our normal set of bass drum patterns. At the beginning, I told you I was going to save the conceptual stuff for next week, and I lied just a little bit. One of my favorite things to do with this particular ostinato, I like this ostinato a lot, right? This is one I play a lot. This one is incredibly versatile. I'm going to show you two. And the first one I'm going to show you is I'm going to end up playing the and on the bell of the ride cymbal. I'm going to play 1 E and, okay? I'm not going to play any of these specifically. I'll start with something simple and then I'll add some bass drum stuff and you'll see how that works. 1, 2, 3, 4. The other way I love to play this ostinato is with an open hi-hat. Sometimes on the bell of the hi-hat. Depending on what sound I'm going for. I'll do a little bit of that again for you, and I'll just play the swish sound out on the bell. And so you can see this is still the same ostinato. Here I didn't even change it at all except to move my hand on the 1E and, right? Here, all I'm doing is adding quarter notes with my left foot. Three, four, right? So that sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is an ostinato. So now when you hear the word ostinato, you know what it means. And if you know the word ostinato, yay. Hopefully now we've talked about at least one new way for you to apply the concept of an ostinato. But really, remember, I've given you three. You can take that ting, right? And go through all of these exercises with not just playing it on the hi-hat, but playing da-da-ting, 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 right? Another one I love to do is this. Same idea, I'm playing the first two notes on one sound source and moving the third note to a different sound source, which is the same thing I'm doing here when I open the hi-hat, right, on the and. So we've got one rhythm, but there's already we talked about three different ways to apply it. I could probably do it with a couple different sounds on the china too. So don't just play. If it takes you all week to get comfortable with this ostinato pattern, that is totally cool. But if you look at this and you hear me talk today and you're like, oh, this is so, I already know how to do this, Penny. What the heck? Figure out some different way to apply this group of 3, 1E and some other way, right? You could break it up differently amongst your hands. You could always try and play it with your left hand. 2, 3, 4. Right, you could do that. There's just a million things you can do, and we are exactly one and a half ostinato patterns into our talk about ostinatos, right? So next week is going to be, next week probably won't be, how do I want to say this? There'll be a worksheet, and there'll be a lot of stuff on it, but it won't be, okay, play this, then play this, then play this, then play this. It'll be a lot of put this with that, put this with that, put this with the other thing, right? And so next week is going to kind of be like one worksheet that you can spend a while on. And that's going to wrap us up for today. So I hope this made sense to you all. Again, don't be afraid to ask questions down in the doobly-doo. No, the doobly-doo is where the worksheet is. In the comments section is where you ask questions. Ha! Y'all got to pay attention to keep me honest. Okay, so I will see you all next week, and we'll see what the hand lesson is going to be. I don't know yet. We're going to finish up Crazy Army, and then who knows what else we'll do. Who knows? I don't know. And then next week on Drumset, we're going to do more with this ostinato concept, and hopefully I will blow your mind. Okay. Thanks for being with me, guys. I really appreciate y'all being here and sticking around. And if you made it all the way to the end, I don't know, comment fish sticks below. I want to see how many people make it all the way to the end. I will see you next week. I love you all so much. Take care. Bye.